Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the Primarchs as we get into the whereabouts of each individual Loyalist Primarch. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day, and check out our channel. We have a huge archive of a bunch of lore videos, so if you want in-depth lore videos on specific Primarchs, check that out because they're already out. With that said, guys, let's get into 40 facts on the whereabouts of the Loyalist Primarchs. Lion L. Johnson, known as the Lion, was the Primarch of the 1st Legion of Space Marines, the Dark Angels. Following the events of the Horus Heresy, Johnson and his crusading fleet returned to his homeworld of Caliban. Inexplicably, they were fired upon by their own Dark Angel forces garrisoned there, under the command of his once trusted mentor and surrogate father, Luther, who had been entrusted with the custodianship of Caliban in the Lion's absence. L. Johnson then led his forces to the surface and assaulted the Order's fortress monastery, where he confronted Luther in single combat. Luther, transformed into a Chaos Champion by the powers of Chaos, was now evenly matched in strength with the enraged Primarch. During his duel with Luther on Caliban, Lion L. Johnson suffered a severe psychic blow, which left him mortally wounded. He was then briefly pulled into a raging warp vortex. Luther survived the contest, but proved mentally unhinged and was taken prisoner by the Dark Angels. He was placed into a stasis cell deep within the bowels of the rock to contemplate his crimes against the chapter's Primarch. His continued existence a secret known only to each successive Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels, whose cell can only be accessed through the use of Swords of Secrets, the chapter's artifact, which is the mark of the Supreme Grand Master's office. The Lion, who had been briefly spirited away in the warp during the destruction of Caliban, eventually emerged and was taken into a hidden and unreachable chamber deep within the heart of the rock by the Watchers in the dark, and placed into stasis to keep him alive. This is a secret known only to the Emperor of Mankind himself, who despite his living death, still sees all upon the Golden Throne. Even the Supreme Grand Master of the chapter is not privy to this last and greatest secret of the Dark Angels. Some amongst the Dark Angels whisper that one day the Lion will return to lead one final crusade intended to achieve the Dark Angels' greatest victory for mankind, and finally bring justice and redemption to the remaining fallen angels. None know that this legend has more truth to it than they realize, or that their lost Primarch now sleeps peacefully at the heart of their own fortress monastery. Jagatai Khan, known also as the Great Khan, was the Primarch of the 5th Legion of Space Marines, the White Scars. 7 years after the end of the Horus Heresy, during the period called the Reformation, when the Imperium was largely guided by the Ultramarines Primarch, Reboot Guilliman, the White Scars adopted Guilliman's Codex Astartes, and the 5th Legion allowed itself to be grudgingly divided into several different successor chapters. In order to contain the outlaws, renegades, and aliens that dwelled within the Maelstrom, and had taken advantage of the disruption caused by the heresy to run amok in the Ultima Segmentum, Reboot Guilliman ordered the surrounding star systems to be reinforced. The White Scars were tasked with the main responsibility of securing the area from their homeworld. According to the writings of the Great Khan of Kwanzhou, the White Scars learned upon their return to Chogoris following the end of the heresy that their homeworld and its people had been the target of numerous raids by the Dark Eldar to seize thousands of their people as slaves. Jagatai swore many oaths against the Eldar because of this crime, and fought them in many battles until peace had largely been restored amongst the Imperial worlds that were adjacent to the Maelstrom. Jagatai fought alongside his sons of the White Scars for another 70 standard years following the end of the Horus Heresy, eventually disappearing when he traveled into the Maelstrom, a large warp rift in the Ultima Segmentum that is a somewhat smaller counterpart of the Eye of Terror. Jagatai is believed to have been in pursuit of the Dark Eldar, who had savaged Mundus Planus following the battle of Coruscant V with the First Brotherhood, when he went through a warp gate into the Dark Eldar portion of the Webway, ultimately vanishing forever. Jagatai had been in pursuit of a mighty Dark Eldar Lord, likely the Archon of the Cabal that had attacked Coruscant V, and perhaps even Mundus Planus itself. None can say what befell the Primarch, if he was lost in the war, or if he was slain or captured at the hands of an alien warlord. But the White Scars believe he still hunts across the galaxy, and beyond, in pursuit of his greatest foes. The White Scars believe he is still alive somewhere within the webway, and will one day return to the chapter in the time of great need. As a result of their Primarch's disappearance, the White Scars hold a particular savage grudge against the Dark Eldar, and will gladly seek out any opportunity to make war upon these savage and terrifying Xenos. The White Scars thus continue to fight in Jagatai's name, destroying the enemies of the Emperor, in preparation for the day when the Great Khan completes his consummate hunt and returns to once again lead his chosen warriors and begin the next great crusade to unify the galaxy. Leman Russ, also known as the Wolf King, is the Primarch of the Space Wolves chapter of Space Marines. No one knows what happened to Leman Russ. Some say he disappeared in the Eye of Terror while searching for his old friend and rival, the Dark Angels Primarch, Lionel Johnson. Others say that to this day he walks disguised amongst mankind, watching over the people of his Emperor and guarding them from the power of chaos. All that is known for sure is that Leman Russ vanished nearly 2 centuries after the Emperor was entombed upon the Golden Throne. All of the Space Wolf warriors and their wolf lords, including the Great Wolf himself, was gathered for a feast on Fenris, the holiday known as the Feast of the Emperor's Ascension. It commemorated the day the Emperor defeated Horus and ascended back into the Immaterium after being entombed upon the Golden Throne. On this occasion, Leman Russ quieted the great hall of his warriors to speak, but then froze in place as his eyes glazed over as if seeing a vision. The assembled Space Wolves looked on in horror as their Primarch fell to his knees and called for his Wolf Guard and closest retainers to attend to him, all except the youngest, Bjorn the Fell-Handed. Giving his closest companions his instructions, Russ turned and left the great hall with his bodyguard in tow, leaving only Bjorn behind. The tale of his disappearance is retold every 1,000 standard years by the dreadnought Bjorn the Fell-Handed, the oldest Astarte dreadnought still in service in the entire Imperium. It is believed by some Astartes amongst the Space Wolves that Russ left Fenris and journeyed into the Eye of Terror to find the fabled Tree of Life, a font of uncorrupted warp energy hidden somewhere within the Immaterium that bears fruit that is said to be able to heal the Emperor and restore him to full life. Every standard year after his disappearance, Russ's place was laid out at the same feast. Every year his drinking horn was filled should he return. For 7 long painful Terran years, the Space Wolves waited patiently for their Wolf King to return. But when he failed to do so, Bjorn was elected the new Great Wolf and led the chapter on their first great hunt to search for Russ. The great companies took to their void ships and sailed in separate directions across the Sea of Stars. They sought their lord on many worlds and in many places. They fought battles and overcame monsters, and the tales of their deeds too long to be recounted, except for the All-Winter's Eye, when the Rune Priest gathered to chant the sagas. The Space Wolves sought and they sought, and Bjorn eventually took his search to the Eye of Terror itself. There, Bjorn was mortally wounded and entombed within the adamantium sarcophagus of a dreadnought. Of Russ they found no sign. Eventually they were recalled to Fenris, bearing naught but a few dismal prophecies and the tales of their adventures. Thus the first great hunt ended in failure and in sadness. The second great hunt led to the recovery of Russ's armor from the Temple of Horus on the world of Rudra on the edge of the Eye of Terror. Over the various great hunts in the millennia since, many glorious victories have been won, each hunt beginning when Russ speaks through visions into the minds of the chapter's rune priests, granting his sons his wisdom from time to time, and sending them on their new quest. None have succeeded in the final goal of recovering their Jane Father, but Russ has assured his sons with his final words that he will return to them in the time of the final battle of the Imperium against the forces of chaos, a period he called the Wolf Time. Many Space Wolves believe that time will soon be upon them. as many forces, all seeking the destruction of mankind, begin their final assault upon humanity. Dorne, known as the Vigilant, was the Primarch of the Imperial 5th Space Marine Legion. It is generally believed that Dorne fell in battle against the forces of Chaos, while resisting a large Chaos fleet during the First Black Crusade, one of the periodic and devastating incursions by the traitor legions from their hellish sanctuary worlds within the Eye of Terror. Commanded by the return of Abaddon the Despoiler, the Chaos fleet vastly outnumbered the Imperial force. Seeing the importance of attacking the enemy fleet while they were still preparing to invade Imperial space, Dorne relied on hit-and-run attacks until his reinforcement could arrive. Dorne and 3 companies of the Imperial Fist mounted a masterful series of boarding actions against the Crusade's warships, crippling drives and life support systems, and even capturing weapon batteries and turning them against other Chaos vessels. Eventually, however, the enemy cornered Dorne and his warriors as he launched a final attack on the bridge of the Chaos flagship, the Despoiler-class battleship, Sword of Sacrilege. None survived to tell the glorious tale of the Primarch's last stand. It is here that the Imperial records are conflicting. One account states that the chapter's chief librarian found his Primarch's body on the bridge in a chilling reprise of Dorne's discovery of the wounded Emperor, and bore him away before the stricken flagship escaped back to the infernal depths of the Eye of Terror. A much older account states that the only trace of the missing Primarch uncovered by the Imperial Fist's subsequent search was a single fist. Dorne's skeletal hand was returned to the Phalanx, where over the years it has been scrimshawed, the bones intricately engraved with the heraldry of all the Imperial Fist chapter's previous chapter masters. Only the current Imperial Fist chapter master has the right to engrave his name upon the bones. Even with minuscule scripts, 10,000 standard years of history have left the bones covered with names, giving a list of the Imperium's greatest heroes. Each bone corresponds to former commanders of the chapter. For instance, the left hand, first metacarpal, contains the name of the chapter master, Bronwyn Albermord, Maximum Thane, Calman Flodsbog, and many others, while the first phalanx of the thumb bears the name Ambrosian Spactor, and so forth. The Hand of Dorne is the Imperial Fist holiest icon, and it serves as a reminder of sacrifice and commitment. So it was that throughout the Imperial Fist history, from the Orc onslaught of the 32nd millennia to the 13th Black Crusade, they have drawn inspiration from their Primarch's remains, and resolved to defeat their foes or die in the attempt. Whether the fist actually belongs to Rogal Dorne or his remains lie elsewhere, it is unknown. It is even possible that Dorne survived the assault upon the Sword of Sacrilege. Whatever his fate, its truth is known only by the Emperor at present. Sanguinius, also known as the Great Angel and the brightest one during his lifetime, was the Primarch of the Blood Angels Legion. During the Battle of Terra, Sanguinius was the first to confront his brother Horus. In evil cunning, the War Master offered Sanguinius one final chance to renounce the Emperor, to join with Horus in the inevitable victory of the forces of Chaos. Yet the Primarch of the Blood Angels held true and refused. Rejected, Horus flew into a rage and attacked. Although bearing the wounds of his earlier actions, and knowing it would almost certainly spell his doom, Sanguinius immediately attacked the corrupted War Master. Horus took the life of his once beloved brother. The body of Sanguinius was taken by the Imperial forces as they retreated from Horus's crippled flagship back to Terra. His body was then borne away by the Blood Angels to their homeworld of Baal, where he was buried deep within the vast tomb beneath the Blood Angels' main chapel. The doors to his tomb were topped with massive angelic effigies in honor of their fallen Primarch. Today, nearly 10 millennia later, Sanguinius is one of the most venerated of all the Loyalist Primarchs by the teeming masses of the Imperium. He is commonly held in the highest honor due to his noble sacrifice, which allowed the beloved Emperor to defeat the arch-traitor Horus. The name Sanguinius is cherished throughout the Imperium by the common citizenry. chapels devoted to Sanguinius have been erected alongside the temples dedicated to the Emperor. The Primarch is even commemorated on his own sacred day of celebration, called Sanguinella, where the Imperial adepts across the galaxy wear the red badge of Sanguinius on their breastplates to commemorate his sacrifice. Ferrous Menace, also known as the Gorgon, was the Primarch of the Iron Hand Space Marine Legion. After Horus's announced betrayal, Ferrous gratefully received the Emperor's order through his brother Rogel Dorne to confront Horus and his lieutenants on the world of Isvan V. This is where Ferrous Menace met Fulgrim in battle. The two Primarchs traded terrible blows, wounding one another deeply during the fierce struggle. As Ferrous pushed himself to his feet and staggered towards the wounded Fulgrim, he cried out as he brought the flaming blade towards his brother's neck. But Fulgrim lashed out as he drew the single-edged, demonically possessed sword he had taken from Lair Temple, and blocked the descending weapon. With the powers of chaos streaming from the blade, diabolical strength flooded Fulgrim's limbs as he pushed against the power of Ferrous Menace, feeling his brother's surprise at his resistance. Fulgrim managed to surge to his feet and lash out, his silver blade biting deep into the breastplate of Ferrous' armor, and the Primarch of the Iron Hands cried out, falling to his knees. His weapon slid from his grasp as he gasped in fierce agony. As Fulgrim raised the silver sword in preparation for delivering the death blow to Ferrous Menace, he found that he did not possess the fortitude to deliver the killing blow. In an instant, he saw what he had become, and what monstrous betrayal he had allowed himself to be a party to. He knew in that eternal moment that he had made a terrible mistake in drawing the sword from the temple, and he fought to release the damn blade that had brought him so low. His grip was locked onto the weapon, and even as he recognized how far he had fallen, he knew that he had come too far to stop. The realization, coupled with the knowledge that everything he had striven for had been a lie. As though moving in slow motion, Fulgrim saw Ferrous Menace reaching for his fallen sword, his fingers closing around the wired grip, the flame leaping once more to the blade at its creator's touch. Fulgrim's blade seemed to move with a life of its own as he swung the blade of his own volition. Fulgrim tried desperately to pull the blow, but his muscles were no longer in control. The demonic blade sliced through the genetically enhanced flesh and bone of one of the Emperor's sons. The Iron Hand's Primarch fell to the ground, his head decapitated. Ferrous Menace was dead by his brother's own hands, and his legion was never given the chance to recover his body. The fate of their Primarch was a mystery to the Legion, as his last known position was overrun by hordes of screaming enemy warriors. What became of the great Primarch Ferrous Menace would remain a mystery to the Astartes of the 10th Legion. One particular Imperial legend tells that his wrecked body was rescued and restored, and that he took refuge on Mars, where he resides still, though this is violently refuted by the Iron Hands themselves. Other more realistic accounts tell that Ferrous Menace's body was burned along with the rest of his legion. His head was collected from the dead of the Dropsite Massacre and presented to Horus Lupercal, who was said to speak to the skull of his former brother as if he was alive. The skull was later under the possession of Abaddon the Despoiler and is rumored to remain on his flagship. Rubut Gilliman, sometimes referred to as the Avenging Sun, is the Primarch of the Ultramarine Space Marine Legion. Following the Great Scouring, Gilliman and his Ultramarines met the Emperor's Children Traitor Legion at the Battle of Thesla, where his corrupted brother Fulgrim mortally wounded him with a slice to the neck by the Demon Primarch's chaos-tainted blade. So it was the dying Rubut Gilliman who was put into a temporal stasis on the verge of death, and his body placed upon the throne that lay in the Temple of Correction on the Ultramarines' homeworld of Macragge. The Primarch was resurrected during the Ultramar campaign of the 13th Black Crusade by the technical prowess of Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Call and the power of the Eldari god of the dead, Ennead. Soon after, Gilliman launched the Terran Crusade from Macragge through the growing warp instability of the galaxy, as the power of chaos waxed mighty once more with the birth of the Great Rift. After nearly being imprisoned for eternity in the Maelstrom, and then almost slain by his brother, the demon Primarch Magnus the Red on Luna, Guilliman finally arrived on Holy Terra. There he spoke to the Emperor, became Lord Commander of the Imperium, the first among equals on the Senatorum Imperialis, and the de facto ruler of the Imperium. He led the Imperial Defenders, including the Sisters of Silence and the Adeptus Custodes, in throwing back the howling servants of the Blood God that attacked Terra, and came out victorious. In the wake of the Second Battle of Terra, Guilliman launched his massive Indomitus Crusade out into the void, determined to throw back the forces of chaos and the Xenos hordes wherever they threatened the worlds of humanity. The Indomitus Crusade would reach its end over a century later at the Battle of Rokos. Afterwards, Guilliman would turn his attention to helping his realm of Ultramar defeat the forces of the Death Guard traitor Legion and the servants of Nurgle in the Plague Wars, driving his traitorous brother Mortarion and the Death Guard traitor legions from his region. Vulcan was the Primarch of the Salamander Space Marine Legion. The ultimate fate of the Salamander's Primarch is a matter of much conjecture, for he disappeared many years after the Horus Heresy. Some sources state that Vulcan led his chapter for 3 entire millennia before he departed on some mission he never declared to the Imperium at large, though scant evidence of any of his deeds throughout that age remain. The tale is made all the more mysterious when the fact that Vulcan appeared to have left behind a text called the Tome of Fire, within which he locked the nature and location of 9 artifacts that the Primarch willed to his chapter. It is said that over 1,000 standard years after the events of the Horus Heresy, Vulcan hid these 9 artifacts around the galaxy for his chapter to find, as a test to see if they were worthy of his leadership. Of these 9 relics, 5 have been recovered, 3 of which, the Spear of Vulcan, Khazar's Mantle, and the Gauntlet of the Forge, are wielded by the chapter's Forge Father, Vulcan Histan. 2. The Chalice of Fire and the Eye of Vulcan remain on the Nectarnian moon of Prometheus in the chapter's Fortress Monastery, while the last 4 artifacts, the Engine of Woes, the Obsidian Chariot, the Unbound Flame, and the Sun of Entropy, have yet to be discovered. The Tome of Fire claims that only when all of these artifacts are recovered by the Forge Father of the Salamanders, as 5 now have been, will Vulcan judge the Salamanders sufficiently tempered to have passed the ultimate contest. Then, so the legend states, he shall return to lead the Salamanders in the final war against the enemies of humanity, in accordance with the prophecies written within the chapter's most sacred tome. Corvus Corax, also known as the Raven Lord, was the Primarch of the Raven Guard Legion. After the Horus Heresy, Corax remained unable to forget the growling monstrous aberrations of humanity that he had personally created. When Corax finally managed to rebuild his legion to anywhere near its pre-heresy strength, the Horus Heresy had ended, and Robert Guilliman's Codex Astartes Edicts required that the legion be split into smaller, more flexible 1,000-man units known as chapters. Never again would one man wield the power of an entire Space Marine legion. Knowing that Guilliman's vision was true, Corax grudgingly split his remaining forces into the new second founding successor chapters. But after pondering for hours as to what should be done to atone for his sins, he decided to administer the Emperor's Peace to the remaining aberrant Raven Guard mutants, praying for both their souls and his. Racked with guilt following the execution, Corax locked himself in his personal chambers in the Ravenspire, the Raven's Tower, begging for the recently ascended Emperor's mercy. Nobody knows if Corax received the absolution he prayed for, but a year to the day after he had locked himself into the Ravenspire, he left the tower and the world of deliverance itself on a course toward the Eye of Terror, never to be seen again. His last words were nevermore. And those were 40 facts on the whereabouts of all the Loyalist Primarchs to this day. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with your friends, or if your friends have ever asked you where the whereabouts of their specific Primarch or your specific Primarch, show them this video. Hopefully they'll enjoy. If you want more in-depth lore into an individual Primarch, check out our 40 facts on that Primarch, because we've probably have already talked about it. So if you want to learn more about the mutants that were created by Corvus Corax, check out our 40 facts on Corvus Corax and you'll get that. Again, the channel is full of just a ton of lore on pretty much every single Primarch, so check that out. But as you can see, the return of a Loyalist Primarch is not in the realm of impossibilities, basically. Even Sanguinius, who was killed by Horus, can technically come back. It would fit his lore really well too, because he's behind those huge doors, basically in a tomb. So if he ever came back, I'm pretty sure that like the Sanguinar would come into or step into the tomb, see the doors open just like Jesus, and the boulder moving from his tomb, and he would be resurrected, yada yada yada, connecting to Christianity. So yeah, every single Primarch can come back. I think Ferrous Menace would be the hardest to believe, because then that means that who was Horus and Abaddon talking to when they were holding the skull of Ferrous Menace? I really hope he's not on Mars. If he's on Mars, I don't really know what that means for the Iron Hands Legion, and I don't really know what that means for Ferrous Menace, who's walking around without a head. I don't know. Comment down below, though, what Primarch would you love to see next? We all kind of know the rumor that the Lion is to come next, and it kind of makes sense, because you're going to have the big Space Marine chapters Primarchs come back first. So now that Gilliman is back, it's either going to be Blood Angels, Dark Angels, or Space Wolves, and I don't think Leman Russ is coming back anytime soon, because his lore kind of says or predicts the end times in a way. So it's either going to be Sanguinius or the Lion, and everybody's betting on the Lion. Subscribe to the channel, because we're going to come out with a part 2 where we go over the whereabouts of all the traitor legions. That's probably going to come out tomorrow. If you guys have any suggestions for other topics of Warhammer 40K, comment down below. And if you guys would like to see a theory video, so a video where we theorize the return of a certain Primarch, regardless of how outrageous it may be, just comment down below and we will try to create that for you. And again, thank you so much for listening to this, guys. It's because of you tuning in every single day to listen to our videos that we can continue to do that. If you want to support us a little bit more, jump on over to Patreon. A simple $1 a month helps us create more videos for you guys. If you can't, we understand. Simply by liking, commenting, and sharing, it helps out the channel. With that said, guys, I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.